Hello, and welcome to the Late Spring 2018 Teacher Webinar. Um, if you have your issue with you, it should look like this. In this issue, we look at the letters M through P. I'm Ellen Egley. I'm the Director of STEM Jobs.
And I am Jill Cataldi, and I contribute to the magazine with lesson plans and help out with the webinars.
So thank you so much for joining us. We'll walk you through the issue, highlight some things that we would highlight if we were still in the classroom, and talk a little bit about the lesson plans that go along with the different articles. So at the beginning, we continue our STEM Myths Busted series by busting the myth that you'll never use algebra in the real world. Unfortunately, this is something that a lot of us hear. And what students don't realize is just because they won't use a particular formula, perhaps, in their everyday lives doesn't mean that algebra isn't useful. And what we try to convey in this segment is that algebra really teaches you how to think and how to see relationships between things. And hopefully that's something that our students will be using for the rest of their lives. And Jill, I know you were a math teacher at the high school level, so
yes, I feel like I discuss it all the time. I bring it up all the time.
This is something you heard a lot in your classrooms.
Oh, still to this day, even outside of the classroom, and I work at a college campus now, and I still get it a lot. So I bring it up all the time. Yes, you will use algebra. You use it, and you don't even realize that you're using it, is actually what I say.
Right, and I think that's true of all of the STEM subjects, and that's what we try to convey on these pages. So this is, I think, a great conversation starter with your students about the real-world applications of STEM. And if ever there was a subject that you use in real life and see in the world around you, I think it's the STEM subjects.
Yes.
Not anything against reading or the language arts or history, but science really is the way the world works.
Yes.
So it's something that I think students can see in the world around them very easily. So then, as I said, we continue our look at the ABCs of STEM, and this issue we look at the letters M, and we covered marketing, N for nursing, optics for the letter O, and publishing for the letter P. So we start out by interviewing a lovely lady who manages the content for her company's website, and talk a little bit about what goes into that, the analytics that she has to look at, as well as just the general maintenance and coding of the website.
Right.
And then for the lesson plan that goes along with this article, we actually have students identify an organization, either in their community or in their school, that could use a website. So maybe it's the PTA, maybe it's a sports organization, maybe it's a local nonprofit, and they actually design a website for them based on the audience that organization is trying to reach. They track analytics, and then in the elaborate section make modifications to the website based on the analytics. And then eventually hand that website off to the organization if the organization wants it. So we try to really put them in the shoes of what a day in the life of that professional is like. Next, we interviewed a woman named Jill, who is the director of marketing for Shell Games. And so often you'll hear your students say, "Oh, I want to design video games." That's their very narrow view of what they want to do. And that's great, because that is a real job. However, there are lots of other careers that are needed to make video game studios work. And marketing is one of them. You would think video games kind of sell themselves, but unless there's a buzz around them, unless students know that they're actually out there, nobody's going to buy the game.
Right.
So she talks a lot about what that looks like for the video game industry and what her role is in the marketing department. So then, of course, we look at our hot job spread for marketing before moving into nursing. So the first gentleman that we interviewed actually started out on Wall Street and was working in New York City when the September 11th attacks happened, and because of that chose to move to Florida, and then moved here to Pennsylvania with his wife, who suggested that maybe he start getting into nursing.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
So, this is the type of story we love to share with our students, is that, I think the time of working one job for 50 years and then you retire is largely behind us. And it's okay to take a very jagged path till you find a career you really love. And that's what happened with Alex. He really felt called to help people, so he left his finance career and now works in the psychiatric ward of a hospital, helping people dealing with addiction, as well as other issues. So the lesson plan really focuses on the opioid crisis, which is not only a problem locally, but nationally, to the point where it's been called a national epidemic. So students look at the actual opioid effect on the brain, the physical changes that happen, why it's so addictive, and then they create a public service announcement around opioid use to try to help students stay away from opioids.
That's really great.
And I believe they also get to design a preventative measure or a treatment to help in the nursing field during that lesson plan. So then the next 3 women we interviewed all work at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. And as you said when we were talking before we got started, nursing is such a high demand field right now.
It really is.
And that's why we chose to focus on that for the letter N. And St. Jude is a little bit different, and the reason we chose to reach out to these women was that they're very focused on research and innovation. So they try out new treatments that haven't been tried anywhere else. And it's a very different approach to nursing than in your typical treatment hospital because it is a research hospital. So the first woman we interviewed is named Emily, and she's the Director of Professional Development and Advanced Practice at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. So she talks a lot about the professional development she does with the other nurses and how she guides them to adopt new research technologies and new treatment technologies. And what I thought was so unique about her story was that she was actually diagnosed with leukemia at the age of 17. And prior to that, she had never considered a career in nursing. And once that diagnosis happened, she was so impressed with the nurses who treated her that it literally changed the course of her life. And I thought that was such a powerful story to get to share with our students.
That she talked about now mentoring too, and then that she's now tying in teaching, which is what she had wanted to do
originally, yes,
along with the nursing, which was very interesting.
Absolutely, and I think that that's so powerful to help students understand that you don't have to choose between your passions. You can find a job that combines them in really novel ways. And I mean, myself as an example, I love teaching. I miss it sometimes still. I also love writing. And I have a job now that allows me to still be involved in education and combines my love of writing. So, students don't have to pick between the parts of themselves. They can find a job that utilizes everything that they love doing. So next we interviewed a woman named Patricia, and she is a nurse manager at St. Jude's, and she started out as a pharmacy technician until some coworkers encouraged her to pursue a nursing degree, and she really found her calling, and manages nurses and really helps them through things that I know I never thought about when a patient isn't doing well, that actually has a big emotional impact on the nurses who are treating them. And then as those nurses are there to help the patient through that difficult time, she as the nurse manager is there to help the nurses through that difficult time.
Yeah, that's not something I would have necessarily thought of either. So that was really,
I thought it was a really unique perspective. So then we close out nursing by speaking with a woman named Tiffany, who is the interim chief of nursing, and functions as the senior vice president at St. Jude's Research Hospital. And she really talks about kind of the business side of nursing. And she's responsible for managing budgets and making sure supplies are ordered and staffing and things like that. And again, a side of nursing that I don't think most people think about.
But a necessary side.
Absolutely. So I think, again, just as students have a very limited view of the opportunities in the video game industry, for example, nursing, which I think most people feel like they have a pretty good handle on what nurses do, would still be surprised by the different opportunities that exist even within the nursing field. So then our nursing hot job spread closes out that section before we move into optics. And here we had a chance to interview, I don't want to get her title wrong, the Senior Director of Marketing for Canon, which I know we all think of as being a camera company, but they actually make lenses and equipment for the medical field, for the photocopiers that you probably use in your school, all the way up to things like binoculars, and other things use lenses that I never thought about. So things like our satellites,
right?
Telescopes, a bunch of really unique things beyond eyeglasses and the lenses that are used in cameras and things like that. So she talks a lot about the different types of things that they make at Canon, and how she took, again, a fairly unique path through Canon, where she's worked for 20 years to get to where she is now. And that actually involved about 8 years working directly with their main business, which was cameras and lenses. And she talks a lot about how to be able to market a product, she needs to understand how it works. And that includes understanding the lenses and things of that nature. So for our lesson plan, we actually use some of the resources available at Canon, and students get to look at some of the different things that Canon makes, research what types of lenses they use, and then they get to make a ray diagram of those lenses before creating their own product that uses lenses to solve a problem in the Elaborate section. So a really unique lesson plan to help students start to see the science that's everywhere around them. And then finally, we close out the issue by looking at publishing. And we interviewed a few different gentlemen in the publishing industry. So the first one goes by Jake, even though his name is Sydney. And
that in itself was interesting.
It was, yes. I'm sure there's a story there that we don't know. But he serves as the president and chief operating officer of his own business. And what I thought was really interesting, and excuse me for reading off of the magazine, but his degrees are actually a bachelor's degree in electrical and computer engineering with a concentration in power systems and nuclear engineering. And then he also has an associate of science in sound engineering.
Yeah.
So that education background, I think in and of itself will be surprising to students. And how does a guy like that end up in the publishing industry?
Right.
So he talks a lot about what the catalyst was for career change, and the challenges and the benefits of owning your own business, which I think is really important for students to understand, because so many students don't like the idea of working for someone else and want to own their own business, but don't really understand what all goes into it as a business owner. So I think his story is really interesting.
Yes, it is.
And could be really informative for our students. And then for our last article, we interviewed a gentleman named Dan who serves as a senior graphic designer at a company, and he's been in the publishing industry for his entire career. And he talks a lot about how much it has changed and how he went from creating everything literally by hand to now he creates everything using technology. So he talks a lot about his pride in the fact that he has been able to modify his skill set so it could evolve with the technology as it evolved. And I think that's really going to be interesting for our students who maybe can't imagine creating everything by hand, can't imagine that career without technology supporting it. And then for the lesson plan that goes with this article, we linked to the very first lesson plan I talked about, which was the marketing lesson plan. And students, if they did that lesson plan, could follow up with the same organization, or if they didn't, they can choose one from scratch. They don't have to do both, but they work really well together. And they create a graphic design for that organization. So maybe it's a logo. It can be whatever that organization's need is. And then in the Elaborate section, they create an infographic to be used on the website that they developed in the previous lesson plan if possible, or on an existing website if not. So really giving students a chance to design something. And we talk all the time about how STEM jobs, yes, we use the acronym STEM, but we believe that automatically includes the arts, because STEM without creativity doesn't work. So students get to use their creativity, and we provide a lot of free software options right on our website for you to have students use if your school doesn't already have some downloaded. So that closes out our ABCs of STEM for this school year. Next school year, we just finished up the editorial calendar, And our theme for next year's issues will be STEM in Unexpected Places. So hopefully we'll take a different look at some industries that students haven't thought of as being STEM, and really are out to prove that STEM is in everything.
Yeah.
And that every student in your classroom could have a career in STEM. There are math people and science people, and then everyone else. Every student is capable of learning key STEM skills and working in STEM if they want to. So thank you so much for sitting with us. If you have any questions, you can always email us at info@stemjobs.com. We'd be happy to hear from you. Thank you so much.